Good evening, Victoria here. Please subscribe to my channel. Today you're going to see lovely Phil, and Phil has had some sporting injuries, tightness in muscles. You get to see his whole core therapy, part 1 of his treatment. Part 2 is next week. Stick to the end to see how we're both feeling after the end of his sacral float, that lovely Qigong feeling. Okay, see you soon. So, Phil, welcome. You're going to have another core treatment today.
Yep.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, not too bad actually. It was weekend of golf, so a little bit stiff and
Whereabouts?
lower back problem.
Yeah. Okay. Have you been better since I've seen you?
Oh yeah.
Things improving?
Yeah.
How's the heel?
Okay, a little bit sore after.
So we had an Achilles heel issue,
Achilles
didn't we?
tendon issue, yeah.
Tendon issue, yeah.
Yeah. Which is it's torn slightly, but it is repairing. That was
okay.
Ago, so.
And you're playing golf, so it can't be that bad.
It's getting better.
Yeah. Good, excellent. Okay, let's give you a nice treatment.
Yeah, great.
So welcome into the Bothy therapy room with Phil. I am starting the treatment by checking with kinesiology techniques to see his strength emanating from his spine, his pelvis and neck, to see the alignment and whether his structure is supporting his body to the best possible extent. Having tested one of the kinesiology tests called an IPSI, I noticed that actually both of his IPSIs were weak, which can show dehydration. So having performed the dehydration test by pulling on the hair, which relates to the kidneys and therefore how much water is supported in the body, I noticed that he certainly was dehydrated, and just by drinking a glass of water it immediately has a positive effect on the muscles of the body, in that they will perform to their best extent, and this will then not be affected by any dehydration. So it is a very warm day on this day, and I did have the fan on, the windows open, so the dehydration is understandable, but it is so important for us all to be drinking water whatever time of year, all throughout the day. It supports our neurological, hormonal, digestive, respiratory, muscular and other systems. So I've now retested the IPSI test and noticed that his right side was weak. So I therapy localized, which means located the area within the back, at the very base of the back, at the hip level, where it needed support. Then I retested and it showed it was strong, which means that the body and his mind were confirming for me that I had got the right spot and that area would be considered going forward by his body and mind in order to start the healing process. You know, a lot of core therapy is all about the therapist having a conversation with the client's body and subconscious, whereby we are simply facilitators, finding out where needs a little extra help and then asking the body to continue the healing process itself, so it doesn't rely on a therapist. Having moved on and done a contralateral test, which means checking for things like the jaw and the other joints of the body, like shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees and ankles, I noticed that Phil's right arm and left leg showed a weakness, and then spotted that his left knee and left ankle would need a little bit more detailed testing, but also some repatterning and treatment. So now you can see I'm looking at his left ankle. This is the ankle, as he mentioned in the earlier chat, that has shown a rupture. It's a small tear in the back of the Achilles tendon, and it has been producing some swelling and pain, stiffness, which meant that he wasn't able to play sports like tennis. But having had a couple of treatments and having been under the doctor, been resting it for a little while, he's now back playing golf, which is great news. The other test that I performed were something called a pitch, roll and yaw. Now that particular series of tests dissects the walking gait, which means all the different angles that our body gets into when it needs to walk, and including when it needs to start walking or to get out of a chair. That's the pitch, which I call the jaw jut. And some of those needed spotting, needed confirming to the neurological system that they needed more help. This one is called a psoas test, where I have the leg out at a 45-degree angle and up 45-degree. And I noticed that his right side, as you can see here, I'm on the right side, halfway down his back at about T11, T12, thoracic 11, thoracic 12. And it's very common, unfortunately. I see in the clinic a failed psoas test quite frequently. And it can mean it's a neck issue, or it can mean it's a lower thoracic and lower neck issue. And all of these will be treated in the second half of the treatment once I start giving the Tuina rocking Chinese massage. This is a wonderful test, and it is hard for Phil to do this one because when he was born with dislocated hips, and it wasn't spotted for quite a while. So his hips can be a little bit fragile and vulnerable. He finds in this position here with his knee out and it is an odd position for any of us to hold, actually, to have one sole against the other ankle. So that means that your hip is only partially, in a small extent, opening. And then I test it in a medium and larger extent before he relaxes back down. So all of these tests are like a little shopping list, and every time I find something that fails a test and it isn't as strong as it could be, then that little shopping list, not only am I constantly writing down in my notes, but also his neurological system, his subconscious, the part of the brain, the large part of the brain that deals with the subconscious, will be noticing all of this treatment, will be stacking up this little shopping list so that his own subconscious will be starting to register that that area needs help and realignment in this case. Now I'm looking at the digestive system. Now for every person, every treatment, each treatment's slightly different. You never know what the client's going to arrive presenting, meaning what symptoms they're going to come with, what sort of day they've had. But the digestive system, this particular place called the iliosacral valve, the ICV, I do tend to test and potentially treat on most people that walk through the door. It's one of those key areas that tends to grumble. It tends to not perform at peak in most people. Some people I test and it's absolutely fine, which is great. But to tell you the truth, that's normally those people that I've treated before and I've shown how to massage their ICV, iliosacral valve. And I do say to people, yeah, massage it as often as you like, maybe 5 times a day would be super, because then they get to know how their ICV feels from one day to the next. They take ownership back of looking after it and giving it a little bit more attention, a little bit of a more soothing massage if it is grumbling at all or if they are suffering with digestive issues. Now this is a wonderful test called the glute max test. So the glute maxes in the buttocks should be one of the strongest muscles in the body, especially for sports people. So Phil does play a lot of golf normally when he hasn't got an Achilles tendon issue, and a lot of tennis and other sports. And so the glute max should be a really strong muscle, but I've found that his right side glute was weak, and so I'm trying to locate the area in the body that is causing that weakness. And if it's one-sided, it's normally in the mid-lumbar, which is about the waist or around the waist level. And it can also be in the neck as well, which I will have treated and therapy localised, added to that little shopping list. So now I'm starting the treatment itself, having done about 10 minutes of kinesiology muscle testing. I'm now going to give a nice long treatment, always starting off at the spine. Now, this type of massage is Chinese, called Tuina, and I'm using like a push and pull motion where I've got my thenar muscles, which is the base of the thumb round that side of the palm, into the side of the vertebra. I normally use one hand as a support and the other one to concurrently feel my way to see where there may be stiffness, tension, tightness, even a fixation or blockage, but also to give therapy. So one hand's always checking and treating and the other normally supporting. It all depends how the body reacts, how the spine is waving and curving and giving way to my pressures. It feels so nice to have Tuina. In fact, I had my own core therapy given to myself today. I do a swap with a good friend and it was recorded, so I will be showing that at some point. So nice to receive this therapy. You really feel like you're in good hands when this is being done. You feel like the therapist really knows what they're doing. They tend to find any hotspots, any areas that need more attention. And interestingly, we don't necessarily spend too long in an area that is painful or tight or stiff. What we'll do is leave it alone a while, make sure that it's warmed up and then come away from it. Treat areas far away or near to it and then come back and see if those other areas have had a calming, soothing, like a wave-like action on the tighter area, which will then soothe that area as well. It normally feels better even when you haven't been working on it directly. And then you can spend longer on that place to bring some motion. And what that will do is it will relieve the circulation, the lymph, the nerves that may be tight and congested around those tight muscles and vertebra in the spine. It's interesting with Tuina, quite often we treat the back and then notice that over time, maybe over weeks or months, other areas are helped by just moving the vertebra. So for instance, people suffering with acne, eczema, psoriasis, for instance, all skin conditions, may be helped once the circulation is improved to that area. So now coming around to the other side of the back, continuing with the Tuina, using fingers sometimes and sometimes the base of my hands, quite often thumbs, in a beautiful rocking. It like takes us back to the cradle really, makes us feel really looked after. So it's especially important during Tuina to check out the sides of the sacrum, which is the base of the spine, which overlaps into the glute area, and the sides of the sacrum and the flat fused bones of the sacrum itself are greatly helped by a lovely rocking Tuina massage. This is a wonderful treatment. I'm not sure if I've shown you this one before. It's called a wing stretch. And I'm able, once the client has completely relaxed and given me the full weight of their arm and shoulder, I'm able to lift it in a way that I circle the top, the point and the scapula of the whole shoulder. And what that does is it helps relieve it from holding onto that rounded upper back part next to the vertebrae, the upper back, the upper spine. And once I've worked on that area, I then use my base of my hands to try and instill some fluidity in between the scapula and the spine. Sometimes the shape of our back can be misshapen because of the scapulas being too rounded and causing the tops of the shoulders to align forwards and therefore misshaping and rounding that upper back, possibly not good, and brought on even more by leaning over a computer and sometimes by certain sports. And often I see it with people that are lovely and tall. They might also have a rounded back, but this wing stretch is so good for relieving that. People often find they walk away from a treatment like this feeling and looking taller, like there's more space in between each vertebra. And this is a lovely treatment where I'm walking down the spine, putting quite a lot of pressure down, not only down to the floor, but also down towards Phil's feet. So it's alternating hands, and this has the effect on the erector spinae muscles, each side of the spine, and therefore on the vertebrae themselves, of just shifting them left to right, but also down each way, so left down, right down. And now I have the flat of my palms on the scapula, both scapula. I'm just feeling into the energy. There's a lot of warmth there. I can see colours behind my closed eyelids. Sometimes I remind the client that they may well be seeing colours at the same time, which quite often concur with the ones that I'm seeing. They're definitely, client and therapists are definitely in tune in a treatment like this one. And now some foot repatterning. So I'm feeling into, in reflex terms, the shoulder. You can see a little bit closer here. So I'm pushing down on the ball of the foot and then down the kidney line, making sure the ball of the foot is separated from the rest of that upper part of the foot. I see this a lot where feet aren't given much attention. We don't love them enough, bless them. And this kind of treatment reminds the muscles and bones in the foot to relax and let go, and to actually release and spread out on the floor rather than tightening up. And now working into the ankle. So this is the ankle that was affected by the Achilles rupture. And this is some energy work using Gong. I've got my thumb at the solar plexus. And the energy now is tactile. And now some leg repatterning, very gently moving the foot in a particular manner that actually works on the opposite hip. So you can see that hip rising the more that I rotate his foot outwards. I'm always mindful and careful of the knees in that position. Now working on Phil's right foot, again working into that shoulder, the ball of the foot, and using caterpillar strokes and touch up between the ball of the foot and the rest of that upper part to separate. It's even better when I use two hands, because then I can hold one area of the foot while rotating another area, and that encourages the muscles and all the different fascia to release. Phil's feet can be quite tight and constricted. And I often say to a lot of my clients actually, to when you're sitting, whether you've got shoes on or not, try and, when you've got your feet on the ground, try and spread your toes as if you're trying to occupy the widest amount of floor with all of your toes, and then feel each toe pressing into the floor and almost bring them back like you're stroking the floor from outwards to inwards. And that will help you to use each toe, use each muscle, but also to remind the foot that the toes and that ball and upper part of the foot need to be separated and relaxed. Now coming on to that lovely Qigong sacral float. So a float is a word we use when we give Qigong and we are concentrating our intention of healing at one particular place. This place is the lower vertebra of the back. And sometimes the back will give me an impression of moving, and my hands, quite often my eyes will be closed at this stage, so I'm not necessarily watching it, but I can feel all of it through my hands, and my hands will take on that movement. And because of the chakras in this area, the sacral chakra, it may well form a circular, very gentle and slow rotating movement. At this stage, the client would definitely be seeing colours behind closed eyelids. I normally see quite a lot of colour at this stage. They can be any colours of the rainbow, all relating to the chakras opening. Quite often therapists giving core may spend anything from maybe 3 or 4 minutes up to 20, 25 minutes just in this position. The feeling is so beautiful and so healing. It has such an amazing effect, not only on the sacrum, but the whole rest of the spine, the neurological, the nervous system, up into the brain, the cerebral spinal fluid, the lymph, and therefore it creates a beautiful well-being that we call neurological organization, where the nerves are talking to the lymphatic system, which is our toxin removal, our immune system. Most clients are utterly relaxed at this stage. There's hardly any shifting and tweaking. They're completely very, very deep in a sense of soma, a sense of like a meditative state. And once I've cleared and ensured that the sacrum is rotating in a lovely manner, I place one hand at the very top of the spine, the base of the skull, and feel the energy travelling between the two. So this again will be watching for that cerebral spinal fluid as it pumps through and up and down the spine. I very slowly bring Phil round, some breath work, some awakening, some small movements of hands and feet, before he then turns over, ready for the rest of his treatment. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Join us next week to see the rest of the treatment. See you then.